Antoine Saint-Exupéry, The Little Prince. I actually first read that in French and then in English to make sure I understood everything afterwards. And the reason I like that is they're books about imagination. And ultimately, imagination is what drives us forward. If someone can imagine something, somewhere along the way, we may be able to create that from an imagination of an individual to a reality for a society. And that's really, really neat stuff. The other authors I've really enjoyed include C.S. Lewis, and certainly looking at the Tolkien series, and all those I would include in the summer reading. I would go through the entire series over a summer in hour upon hour of reading.
I enjoyed Janet Daly, and she wrote a book called The Proud and the Free, it's a historical novel. So it puts a human face on the Cherokee Nation in the Trail of Tears as they were moved from Georgia over to Oklahoma. So it sort of brings history alive, and I just thought that she's a very great storyteller, and I just thought that that's a very good way for people to understand history better and relationships with people.
My favorite story at this point in time is John Adams by David McCullough. And I'm particularly fond of this book because it's made me a better American. It's made me realize what our founding fathers went through to give us our freedoms. And I highly recommend it to anyone who has an interest in history and having history come alive and be important to you or any reader about America at this time. Certainly the author brings alive the famous names that we've all learned through the course of time. But the sacrifices and the time away from each other and the lack of communication makes you realize what was entailed on the part of so many people to make our freedoms come true.
I have read a series of books by my favorite author, and that author is Barbara Tuchman. She's a historian and has written about a half a dozen brilliant books on events. World War I, for example, the 14th century and everything that happened in that period of time. Tracked peoples around the globe in different migrations. A brilliant writer. I found myself reading her books when I'm on airplanes, which has been a lot of time, and I can't put the book down. So for a nonfiction writer, it's been very exciting. And I'd have to say by far, she's the best author, and her books, for me, are the best books I've ever read.
When you start reading it, you feel pretty depressed about her situation that she grew up in. But as you continue to read and read about her thoughts in her head, as she was thinking about what was going on during that time, it kind of gives you hope, because even though she went through some very demeaning kinds of things, she was raped, she stopped talking for a period of time in her life. But when you think about even her title, I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, it says, even though you go through racism, sexism, poverty, there's still hope. That's why the cage bird can sing, because they can see a light out there.
And I think Maxwell has always been able to help unlock that key for me when I was in a tough point and I needed that help. I recommend him to every young business person, academic leader, civil leader, servant leader, to spend time with John Maxwell, because in all of his books, he will in fact find and help you find that one piece that you identify with that is a state of where you know you are and where you want to be, and he'll give you that notion that's necessary to move forward.
As I thought about favorite books of mine throughout the years, certainly there was a metamorphosis from the time I was a young child, but as a young person, I truly enjoyed the Dr. Seuss books. I thought they were brilliantly written, and so many interesting references to a lot of life lessons. I also did enjoy, they weren't books per se, but learned so much about my value set growing up through many of the legal briefings that my father, Fred Allen, would write, and I would find really fascinating to read. And then later in life, really enjoyed so many great books written about leaders worldwide and the huge challenges they went through and what life lessons I learned, how they overcome their challenges. And it's a struggle to come up with an exactly perfect favorite book in that regard because there's so many. But I certainly think reading and continuing to read is such an important part of my life.
I was in first grade at Lincoln Elementary School. I can even remember my librarian, Miss McQuarrie, because I would read by author. If I found an author I liked, I would read everything they wrote. And we just became good friends. And she would let me take my books home because, you know, in earlier grades, you didn't get to take books out of the library. This was Jackson, Tennessee. But we were good friends and she let me take my books home. And that's how I got in trouble at home. I would read books instead of getting some of my housework done.
My very first library experience was in my early single digits of existence on Monroe Street in Peoria, Illinois, at that main library, the Peoria Public Library. And the smell of the stacks and the books, the experience of that, seeing all that knowledge, all that information in one place, walking by those books and randomly picking books is in and of itself an adventure and experience.
Well, you know, as Peoria has grown over its history, farther in every direction, but mostly north and west, if you trace people that have been born in our community or have lived in our community for long periods of time, the majority of them were born and raised on the south side of Peoria. And so, you know, that area is very special to our community. A lot of people have their roots there. And having the Lincoln branch down there with its historical significance is still very special because it draws those people back to their roots.
Libraries like we have here in Peoria become our local history. There are sections of this library that will detail items and historical events from our time here.
I feel one of our greatest resources are our libraries, because even though there are great technical advances, the written word still needs to be in place and still in a position that can be referenced by anyone. Libraries are for everyone, and everyone can find a book that they enjoy. And that's important, and there's no high cost to it.
Our library system here in Peoria, we should be so proud of because we have over 3 million people that use this library, have used this library in the last 5 years. 3 million people. Now, put it into perspective. That's the basis and the foundation of literacy. It's knowledge that's going to be used forward, and we don't know what day it's going to be used, but that's the beauty of it.
And I think most of us take so much of that for granted, that you will always have libraries and communities. And one thing we really cannot forget is it's a resource that requires resource. And as a community, if we don't fight to preserve this public benefit, these benefits can go away. And so I believe that we really do need to support our libraries. I'm very happy about this new facility as well as the renovation of our main library downtown. It's absolutely beautiful.
When I retired, I said this was going to be my second home. I was able to serve on the library board for 12 years, and they were thinking about a North Library for a long time. And I do think Lincoln Branch is one of the best kept secrets in Peoria, because when I worked for Head Start, our children would go there for story time. No, in Peoria, we're very blessed. We're very blessed.
That's why it's important that we maintain a system like our public library system, because if you want to learn more about Maxwell, or you want to learn more about Covey, or you want to come in and be helped with a technology issue, or you want to excite the imagination, the creativity of a child through a summer program at that point. There's over 100 programs a month that across our library system that are there in order to light that curiosity.
And so for a lot of people that don't realize the resource that the library is, it's not the library that you and I grew up in. It's not the library that most anybody over 40 or 50 grew up in. It's a dynamic place. It's probably the building, if there's one building in the community that you can go to and find out the most about any subject, it's your library. So it's one-stop shop for knowledge. And we're fortunate in Peoria because we don't just have that library system that is just complacent and it's just that building that's just been over there on the corner. It's always been there. We have an extremely strong library. Our board is second to none. They've continued to grow and expand, understand what it is that the community wants from their library, and make sure that they're finding the programs and the materials to help educate them on that. So anybody that hasn't been in the library lately needs to be and needs to come and check it out. But the one thing I'm going to tell people is you do not understand what a huge resource that you have. No matter where you live in the city, there's a library with less than 5 minutes away.